Have you ever wondered why New Year's resolutions fail? Why the surge of motivation after a powerful speech evaporates by sunrise? It's because we have been sold a lie. We've been taught that resilience is forged in a single, heroic moment of defiance, the grand gesture, the dramatic turnaround. We imagine the entrepreneur pulling an all-night session to save the company, the addict having a sudden epiphany and never touching the substance again. These stories make for great movies, but they are a terrible blueprint for life. They teach us to wait for a lightning strike of inspiration, when we should be learning to build a shelter, brick by brick, that can withstand any storm. The truth is that an unbreakable mind is not the product of a single event. It is the result of 1,000 seemingly insignificant choices, repeated daily. It's a quiet, unglamorous process. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said it best. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. The emphasis is on the doing, the consistent application, not the initial declaration. I remember my early days as a CEO in the tech world. I lived for the heroic moments. Closing a massive deal at midnight, fixing a catastrophic server crash at 3 a.m., giving the rousing speech that turned a demoralized team around. I thrived on the adrenaline, the intensity. I believed this was strength, but it was a fragile strength. When the market turned, when a key partner betrayed me, that intensity wasn't enough. It was like trying to stop a flood with a single massive sandbag. The water simply went around it. My anxiety was relentless. My inner state was completely at the mercy of my external circumstances. I was powerful, but I was not resilient. My burnout wasn't just physical, it was philosophical. I had built my entire identity on a foundation of sand, believing that intense effort could conquer all. The real work began when I had nothing left. It wasn't a heroic gesture. It was the simple, humbling habit of getting up at 5 a.m., not to work, but to sit in silence for 10 minutes. It was the habit of reading one page of philosophy instead of checking the market news. It was the habit of writing down one thing I controlled and one thing I didn't. These weren't grand gestures. No one applauded. No one even knew. But these small, repeated actions were the mortar that began to bind the bricks of my inner citadel. So I ask you, are you waiting for a crisis to prove your strength? Or are you building it quietly, every single day? Is your life structured around dramatic sprints, or is it designed for a sustainable, purposeful marathon? If building resilience is a process of laying bricks, the first and most critical choice is which brick to lay first. This is what we call a keystone habit. In architecture, a keystone is the central stone at the summit of an arch that locks the whole structure together. In life, a keystone habit is a single, foundational practice that creates a cascade of positive effects, organically leading to the development of other good habits. It's the first domino that, once tipped, sets the rest in motion. For many, it's exercise. When you start exercising, you naturally want to eat better. When you eat better and exercise, you sleep better. When you sleep better, you are more focused and patient. One change ripples through your entire operating system. When I was mentoring a young executive named David, he was the classic picture of modern burnout. Overwhelmed, reactive, living in his inbox, surviving on caffeine and cortisol. He came to me wanting a complex system to overhaul his entire life. He wanted a dozen new habits to implement at once. I told him to do just one thing. Every morning, before touching his phone, before even making coffee, he was to make his bed. Perfectly. Not just pulling up the covers, but military style, with crisp corners and a smooth surface. He was insulted. He was a high-powered executive managing a multi-million-dollar budget, and I was telling him to focus on housekeeping. But he trusted the process. A week later, he reported that it felt good. It was a small, immediate win. It was a visible signal of order in a life that felt chaotic. 2 weeks later, he said the 5 minutes of quiet order made him want to keep the rest of his room tidier. A month later, that tidy room made him want to organize his desk before leaving work. That organized desk led to a clearer mind in the evenings. The single habit of making his bed didn't just give him a tidy bed, it taught him the feeling of starting the day with an act of discipline and order, a feeling he began to crave in other areas of his life. That was his keystone. The Stoics understood this principle not as life hacks, but as a fundamental aspect of character. They knew that small disciplined actions were practice for larger ones. If you cannot command your own bed, how can you expect to command your own mind in the face of chaos? Your keystone habit is not about the habit itself. It is about proving to yourself, in a small, undeniable way, that you are the one in control. It's the daily vote you cast for discipline over disorder. What is the one small, almost trivial act of discipline that you could implement tomorrow morning? What is the first domino you need to push that could begin to topple a whole series of negative patterns? Once you've identified your keystone habit, the next step is to build upon it with intention. This is where the simple but profound technique of habit stacking comes in. The concept is straightforward. You anchor a new habit you want to build to an existing, automatic habit. You chain the actions together, leveraging the momentum of the established routine to carry the new one. The formula is: after current habit, I will new habit. It's not about finding more willpower or more motivation, it's about intelligent design. You are creating an architecture for your actions, making the desired path the path of least resistance. Let's move away from theory. A mentee of mine, a writer named Sarah, was struggling with consistency. She wanted to build a daily writing habit, but she could never find the right time or the right mood. The decision to start was a daily battle she often lost. We analyzed her existing routine. What did she do every single day without fail? She made a pot of coffee. That was her anchor. So we created a new rule. After I turn on the coffee maker, I will sit at my desk and open my laptop. We didn't even say, I will write. We just focused on the ritual of starting. The coffee maker's gurgle became a trigger, a Pavlovian bell for her creative work. Soon, that evolved. After I pour my coffee, I will write one sentence. One sentence often turned into a paragraph, and a paragraph into a page. She removed the friction of the decision. She wasn't relying on inspiration, she was relying on the coffee maker. She stacked a new, difficult habit onto an old, easy one. This is the practical application of Stoic logic. The Stoics were masters of routine and ritual, understanding that a structured day leads to a structured mind. They didn't wait to feel like being virtuous, they practiced the actions of virtue until it became their nature. In my own life, I rebuilt my mental fortitude with this exact method. After my morning meditation, I would immediately open my journal. After I finished my workday, I would immediately change into workout clothes. I linked the end of one activity to the beginning of the next, creating a seamless flow and eliminating the dangerous pause where procrastination and excuses can creep in. I was no longer negotiating with myself. The plan was set. The architecture was in place. All I had to do was execute. Look at your day. What are the habits that run on autopilot? Brushing your teeth? Driving to work? Eating lunch? How can you chain a new, desired action to one of those established anchors? Are you relying on the finite resource of willpower, or are you creating an intelligent system where the right choice becomes the easy choice? We've talked about the mechanics of habits, the keystones, the stacking, but this is where most systems fail. They focus exclusively on the what and the how, neglecting the most critical element, the why. You can build the most impressive set of outer walls, a perfect diet, a rigorous workout schedule, a pristine calendar, but if the fortress within is empty, it will crumble under the first real siege. This brings us to a core insight. We are not building habits, we are building an inner citadel. This idea comes directly from the emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius. He wrote, "Men seek retreats for themselves, houses in the country, seashores and mountains. But this is altogether a mark of the most common sort of men, for it is in your power whenever you shall choose to retire into yourself. That internal retreat, that fortified inner space of calm, logic, and self-possession, is the inner citadel. The habits are not the goal. The habits are the training regimen for the mind, designed to build and fortify this internal sanctuary. For years in my business career, I built outer walls. I had the habits of success, waking up early, working late, networking relentlessly, reading business journals. But when a competitor launched a superior product and our market share plummeted, my outer walls were useless. I was frantic, angry, and terrified. My habits gave me no comfort because they were all aimed at controlling external outcomes, which, as I learned, were never truly under my control. My inner world was chaos because I had never trained it. I had built a fortress with no one inside to command it. The shift happened when I changed the purpose of my habits. My 5 a.m. wake-up was no longer about getting a head start on emails, it was about practicing the discipline of choosing purpose over comfort. My daily reading habit shifted from market reports to Seneca and Epictetus, not to gain an edge, but to train my judgment. My workout was no longer about looking powerful, but about practicing resilience in the face of physical discomfort. Each habit became a mental push-up, a way of strengthening my ability to remain calm, objective, and rational, regardless of what the outside world threw at me. The goal was not a better outcome, it was a better me. When you stack the habit of journaling after your morning coffee, are you just logging your day, or are you practicing the art of self-reflection, fortifying your mind against reactive emotion? When you build the habit of a tough workout, are you just building your body, or are you training your spirit to persist through voluntary hardship so it's ready for involuntary ones? Your habits must have a deeper philosophical purpose. They are the tools you use to architect your soul. Ask yourself this: are your daily habits merely a checklist to be completed, or are they a deliberate training ground for your character? Are you building outer walls of achievement, or are you forging the unbreachable inner citadel of your mind? Our culture is obsessed with addition. We are constantly urged to do more, add more, be more, add a new skill, add a new morning routine, add another side hustle. But the path to resilience and mental clarity is often found not in addition, but in subtraction. This is the concept of via negativa, the negative way. It posits that we often gain more by removing the downsides than by adding more upsides. A resilient habit blueprint is as much about what you stop doing as it is about what you start. Think of a sculptor. The masterpiece is not created by adding clay, but by chipping away the non-essential marble to reveal the form within. Your mind is that block of marble. The anxiety, the reactivity, the distraction, that is the excess stone. The habit of not doing is your chisel. For me, the most transformative habit I ever built was the habit of the sacred pause. As a CEO, my entire being was wired for immediate response. Email comes in, I answer it. Phone rings, I pick it up. Problem arises, I solve it. I was a professional reactor. This created an illusion of productivity, but it was a state of constant low-grade panic. My nervous system was shot. My decisions were hasty. I was chipping away at my own foundation. My new habit was simple. When a stimulus occurred, an email, a request, an internal spike of anger, I would do nothing. For 1 full minute, I would not reply. I would not react. I would simply breathe and observe. This habit of not reacting was excruciating at first. It felt like ignoring a fire alarm. But over time, it became a superpower. That 1-minute pause created a space between the event and my response. In that space, logic could enter. Perspective could be found. I stopped giving knee-jerk answers and started providing considered solutions. I built the habit of not checking my phone for the first hour of the day. This single act of subtraction did more for my focus and peace of mind than any productivity app I ever added. I reclaimed my mornings from the world's agenda and dedicated them to my own. A young programmer I mentored was struggling with imposter syndrome. His habit was to constantly seek validation, to check social media, to compare his work to others online. His improvement plan was to add more coding courses, read more books. I advised him to subtract. For 1 week, his only habit was to not look at any tech forums or social media. He was to simply do his work. The silence was terrifying for him. But in that silence, he was forced to rely on his own judgment. He stopped judging his work based on the noise of others and started evaluating it on its own merits. He subtracted the external voices to finally hear his own. What could you subtract from your life that would add more peace and focus? What is the automatic reaction, the compulsive check-in, the pointless argument that you could choose to not engage in today? True strength isn't always about the force you apply, it's often about the chaos you refuse to participate in. We live in a world that glorifies intensity. We celebrate the overnight success, the viral launch, the crash diet that sheds 20 pounds in a month. But intensity is a flash flood, powerful, dramatic, and unsustainable. It rips through the landscape, and then it's gone, often leaving damage in its wake. Consistency is a gentle rain, steady, quiet, and persistent. It may not seem like much in any given moment, but over time, it soaks deep into the soil and allows life to flourish. If you want to build unshakable resilience, you must abandon your love affair with intensity and commit yourself to the philosophy of consistency. This means focusing on the micro win. It's about setting the bar so laughably low that you cannot fail. The goal is not to exhaust yourself with a heroic effort, but to build an unbroken chain of small victories. An unbroken chain, no matter how small the links, is infinitely stronger than a series of disconnected, intense efforts. As the Stoics taught, it is not the single great philosophical insight that changes a person, but the daily review of those principles. I learned this the hard way during my physical recovery from burnout. I went from being a man who prided himself on grueling 2-hour workouts to someone who got winded walking up a flight of stairs. My instinct, my ego, was to try and jump back to my old routine. I would push myself too hard for one day and then be unable to move for the next 3. It was pure intensity, and it was getting me nowhere. My breakthrough came when my physical therapist gave me a new rule. Walk for 5 minutes. That was it. My ego screamed that it was pathetic, but I did it. The next day, I did it again, and the next. For 1 month, I just walked for 5 minutes a day. I built the chain. I proved to myself that I could be consistent. Only then did we increase it to 10 minutes. The progress was slow, but it was unstoppable. I was building back my strength, but more importantly, I was rebuilding my trust in the process. This applies everywhere. You don't build a successful business with one brilliant idea. You build it with 1,000 consistent days of serving customers, improving the product, and managing the finances. You don't build a strong relationship with one grand romantic gesture. You build it with 1,000 small consistent acts of kindness, listening, and respect. The focus on the micro-win defeats procrastination because the task is too small to justify skipping. It builds momentum because each day you get to check the box and reinforce your identity as someone who follows through. So, where in your life are you choosing intensity over consistency? Are you trying to write a book in a weekend, or are you committing to writing 1 page a day? Are you trying to fix your diet with a radical, unsustainable cleanse, or are you starting with the simple habit of drinking 1 extra glass of water each day? Lower the bar, celebrate the micro-win, and build the chain. That is the path to lasting change. Of all the Stoic principles, none is more practical or powerful than the dichotomy of control. Epictetus stated it with absolute clarity in the opening of his Enchiridion. Some things are in our control and others not. In our control are our judgments, our impulses, our attitudes, our actions, our inner world. Not in our control is everything else. What other people think, the economy, the weather, our health, our reputation, the outer world. Resilience is born and anxiety dies the moment you can clearly and consistently distinguish between these two categories and focus your energy exclusively on the former. Your daily habits are the ultimate training ground for this principle. Every habit you design should be a deliberate exercise in focusing on what you can control. The habit should never be tied to an outcome you cannot command. This is a subtle but critical distinction that separates a resilient process from a fragile one. For example, a mentee of mine in sales had a daily goal: make 3 sales. His mood and self-worth were a roller coaster, entirely dependent on the whims of his customers. On a good day, he felt invincible. On a bad day, he felt like a failure. His focus was on the outcome, which was outside of his control. We redesigned his core habit. His new goal was make 20 high-quality prospecting calls. That he could control. He couldn't control whether someone bought, but he could absolutely control whether he picked up the phone and followed his script with professionalism and energy. His focus shifted from the external result to his internal effort. Unsurprisingly, his sales actually increased because his consistency improved dramatically. He was no longer demoralized by rejection, he was fulfilled by his disciplined action. I applied this relentlessly in my own transformation. My old goal was increase company revenue by 10%. This depended on the market, on competitors, on 1,000 factors beyond my direct command. I could control that. I couldn't guarantee the outcome, but I could guarantee the input. I detached my sense of accomplishment from the chaotic world of results and anchored it to the firm foundation of my own actions. This is the source of inner peace. It is the understanding that the universe does not owe you a specific outcome. Your duty is only to play your part with excellence. Look at your goals and the habits you've built around them. Are they focused on things you can control or things you cannot? Is your goal to get a promotion, or is it to consistently deliver excellent work and proactively seek new responsibilities? Is your goal to be happy, or is it to practice gratitude and act in accordance with your values? The first in each pair is a recipe for anxiety. The second is a blueprint for resilience. Your habits are your daily vote, casting your ballot for what is within your power. We have laid out a blueprint. We have discussed the keystone, the stack, the inner citadel, the power of subtraction, the micro-win, and the dichotomy of control. But a blueprint is useless if the architect never inspects the construction. The final, and perhaps most crucial habit, is the habit of the daily review. This is the practice that governs all other practices. It is the meta-habit that ensures the system adapts, improves, and remains aligned with your core purpose. Without it, even the best designed habits can become mindless rituals. The Roman philosopher Seneca wrote extensively about his evening routine. Before sleep, he would review his entire day, asking himself a simple set of questions. What ailment have I cured today? What fault have I resisted? Where have I failed? What have I done well? This was not an exercise in self-flagellation. It was a calm, objective, and private audit of his own actions and judgments. It was a chance to learn from his mistakes, to acknowledge his progress, and to set a clear intention for the following day. This is the practice of a true mental strategist. When I began this practice, it was deeply uncomfortable. It's easy to coast through life on autopilot, never truly examining your own behavior. But I forced myself into the habit. Every evening, after my work was done and before I relaxed, I would take out a journal. My habit stack was, after I brush my teeth for the night, I will open my journal. I answered 3 questions. 1. What did I do today that aligned with my principles? 2. Where did I let an external event disturb my inner peace? Why? 3. What is the one thing I will focus on improving tomorrow? This 10-minute habit was more valuable than hours of mindless work. It revealed my patterns of reactivity. It showed me where my systems were failing. It forced me to take responsibility for my inner state. On a day I lost my temper in a meeting, the review didn't let me blame the other person. It forced me to ask, why did I choose to react with anger? What principle did I betray? This practice turns every day, good or bad, into a lesson. It transforms you from a passive participant in your life into an active, conscious student of your own character. This is the final piece of the blueprint. Your habits are not set in stone. They are a living system that requires your attention. The daily review is how you prune, cultivate, and guide that system. It is how you ensure that you are not just busy, but that you are moving deliberately toward the person you wish to be. It is the ultimate act of personal responsibility. It is the commitment to look yourself in the eye and be honest. That honesty, practiced daily, is the final lock on the gate of your inner citadel. It is what makes your resilience truly unshakable. What did you learn today? Where did you succeed, and where did you fall short of your own standards? And what will you do better tomorrow? The work is never finished. Begin.